This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So I wanted to talk about today some of the biggest missed opportunities, what ifs in recent Browns memory. Now, what I mean in recent or modern Browns history is 10 years. Now, it's 2023, so anything before 2013, we just not going to talk about. There are clearly a lot of things to talk about when it comes to Browns mistakes, what ifs, missed opportunities. If I talked about them all, we'd be sitting here for 5 hours. And as much as I think y'all like my content, I do not think y'all like it enough to watch it for 5 hours like it's the Snyder Cut when a new one come out every day. So I'm just going to go over some of the things that jumped out to me, and let me know if there are things you think I missed in the comment section below. But the first thing I'm going to start out with is Josh Gordon's whole career. Now, this barely made the cut, which to some of us makes us feel old, because Josh Gordon's big season being almost, well, exactly 10 years ago. That's crazy to me. That's crazy it's been that long. To me, Josh Gordon still feels like he has a lot in the tank, but he's been in the NFL for, well, he's not in the NFL. He's been in professional football for 10 years. Well, 11, because he came into the league in 2012, y'all. Like, that's how long Josh Gordon's been around. And we're still talking about what ifs with Josh Gordon. If you aren't aware, which I don't know how you're a Browns fan and you're not aware, but if you aren't, Josh Gordon in 2012, his rookie year was really, really good. And then his second year in the NFL, he was arguably the best wide receiver in football in 14 games. And with Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon, and God knows who else throwing him the football, it was a miracle that Josh Gordon was this good. Like, it was literally to throw it up to Josh Gordon and see what happens offense. And he dominated. He dominated. Like, Josh Gordon was something else in 2013. Unfortunately for Josh, that would end up being the peak of his career, as he would never even come close to reaching those highs. He had drug suspension after drug suspension back when the NFL had a very strict policy on marijuana. And one of the things that gets left out of this, because we think it's just marijuana with Josh Gordon, well, during his suspension, I remember it being, he got into the program, the NFL program, his rookie year. And I believe he served a 4-game suspension his rookie year. So that's stage 3 of the NFL program at the time. And then once you get to stage 3 of a controlled substance program back in that day, it used to restrict everything, including like legal things like alcohol. Like, he couldn't do alcohol or tobacco and stuff like that. So, and also the testing threshold was like really, really small. They ended up changing that after one of these Josh Gordon. Like, Josh Gordon got suspended so many times that I think he revised the rules like 6 different times throughout his suspension. I think he just got suspended last year for this whole thing. So Josh has been suspended a lot for various things. I think a lot of them were like alcohol related, because he was on like stage 80 of the drug program, and he never really had the full career that you thought he could have. We never really found out, like, was he just a 1-year wonder, or was he somebody who was prone to be one of the best receivers in the NFL? Given that he is 11 years in, and he's still playing professional football, and when he gets reps, and like, it's the XFL, but he looks pretty good in the XFL. So I would assume that he was just that good at wide receiver. But that is missed opportunity number 1. Number 2 is the 2014 draft. Now, people point to all these drafts and say, this is the worst draft of all time. This is the biggest mistake in the first round that the team's ever made. And when you talk 2014 draft, I think the average person will say, yeah, man, Johnny Manziel, that was a terrible pick. And I always shake my head at that notion that Johnny Manziel was the worst pick for the Browns in that draft, because Justin Gilbert was selected 8th overall in that draft. And Justin Gilbert had a worse NFL career than Johnny Manziel. And it's not even close. Like that's my testing question. Whenever somebody like says they're from Cleveland and they're a big Browns fan, I'm like, all right, man, who's the worst pick in the 2014 draft? And if you say Justin Gilbert, we got something to talk about. If you tell me it's Johnny Football, then you watched ESPN all that time. You wasn't in the grind with us because we was all complaining about how sorry Justin Gilbert was. Justin Gilbert had a very interesting time in Cleveland. He was known for not showing up to meetings. At one point, it came out that the reason he's late to meetings is because he's oversleeping. And after he had already gotten suspended from meetings, somebody brought this up in a press conference. And I believe Justin Gilbert said something along the lines of, yeah, I need to get an alarm clock. After he already had gotten disciplined for repeatedly not showing up for meetings. 8th overall pick. It only gets worse when you realize that the 2014 draft might have been one of the best drafts in NFL history. I think 70% of the 2014 draft were Pro Bowlers in the first round. Like you had a 70% chance of getting a Pro Bowler in the first round of the 2014 draft. You didn't have to do good. And let's keep in mind that the Browns started that draft with the number 4 pick, but they traded back, like this franchise loves to do, and it bit them in the ass, like trading back tends to do the Cleveland Browns, because the Browns could have had access to Mike Evans. They could have drafted Khalil Mack, but they traded back and got Justin Gilbert. And even then, you could have got Odell Beckham, Aaron Donald, Kyle Fuller, Zach Martin, CJ. You could have gotten literally anybody else. Literally anybody else. And then it's compounded with the fact that they drafted him without visiting him. They did no background on him. They literally took Justin Gilbert off vibes. Like they literally did what fans do, where we like look at some tape and then watch some highlights and go, I would draft him with the 8th overall pick. And that's fine when me or you do it, because that's what we have the resources to do to make these decisions that don't actually matter because we're doing them on a mock draft simulator. The Browns had all the resources in the world, all the access in the world, and that's the process that they went with the 8th overall pick to draft Justin Gilbert. And they drafted Johnny Manziel, and that's just that's a 1-2 combination, because in one of the greatest first rounds in NFL history, where you had the highest percentage of Pro Bowlers, I think in recent memory, in a draft, we're talking about from picks 9 through 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight Pro Bowlers are picked right after Justin Gilbert. 3 were picked before him. 4 were picked before him. But we picked Justin Gilbert. And then we picked Johnny Manziel. And this is what I'll say about the 2014 draft. Thank goodness you drafted Joe Bitonio, because other than that, this draft would have been one of the worst in NFL history. And 2, you legitimately drafted 2 of the worst players in the entire draft in the first round. 2014 draft, that's terrible. Now, something on the less terrible side of the spectrum, but equally as dumb, is a string of things that happened in this time period. We're going to start at the beginning. When the Browns went out to hire Hugh Jackson, it was recommended to them by Paul DePodesta or John DePodesta. I keep missaying his name, but it was suggested by DePodesta that the Cleveland Browns should hire now Bills coach Sean McDermott. The Browns decided, nah, we're not going to listen to him. And they hired Hugh Jackson. Yep. Now look, was all of the losing Hugh Jackson's fault? No. The team clearly wasn't trying to win games. But was a lot of the losing Hugh Jackson's fault? Yes. Okay, I hate when I hear this narrative about Hugh Jackson, that nothing that happened during the 1-31 run was his fault, because that team was built to win 3 games. They won 1 in 2 years. Like, they could have won 3 games. They weren't that bad of a roster. One of these teams had Myles Garrett on it. So the idea that this team was so hopeless that they couldn't win a game was ridiculous. That was not true. This team was a normal bad football team, a normal 3-win football team. Okay. And if he would have went 6 and whatever during those 2 years, I wouldn't have cared as much. But 1-31, that was especially bad. One, he was hell bent on bringing RG3 here for whatever reason. Did that. Congratulations. I don't know why. The ghost of RG3 was here. He played like 4 games. He was terrible. And then this leads into the next mistake, because on mistake on top of mistake, he used to run trick plays. He used to run quarterback sneaks from the 5, like all kind of ridiculous stuff that Hugh Jackson used to do that Sean McDermott definitely wouldn't have done. Hugh Jackson also tried to trade a 2nd round pick in 2018 for AJ McCarron. And that 2nd round pick ended up being Nick Chubb. So, yeah, there's that. There is absolutely that with the McDermott hire. Also, that leads into the 2017 draft, because yes, you drafted Myles Garrett. Congratulations. You drafted what everybody would have. All 32 teams in 2017 would have drafted Myles Garrett number 1 overall. Nobody was really dumb enough to do anything else. And the fact that I know that, and you want to know how I know that, is because the Cleveland Browns drafted Myles Garrett number 1 overall. And if there were a team that were dumb enough not to take Myles Garrett number 1 overall, it was the Cleveland Browns. Now, people are going to point out Pat Mahomes was in that draft. Look, Pat Mahomes was never going number 1 overall in that draft. We can reverse engineer it and live in alternate history all we want, but we were never drafted Pat Mahomes number 1. But at number 12, you could have had, this guy who plays quarterback for the Cleveland Browns that we paid an incredibly expensive price for, Deshaun Watson. Could have had him, traded that pick away to the Houston Texans for what did eventually end up becoming Denzel Ward. So you got something out of it. But then you also traded 3 first-round picks for that quarterback that you passed on in a few years. So 2017 draft, another missed opportunity in the 2017 draft. I think you had 3 picks in that draft. All 3 of those picks, you had the opportunity to take TJ Watt. You didn't take TJ Watt. Could have had TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Deshaun Watson in one draft. And it's not like I'm being unreasonable. That all could have happened. It didn't. We got David Njoku and Jabril Peppers, but it could have been so much better. Missed opportunity. 2018 draft, Josh Allen, not taking Josh Allen over Baker Mayfield. This one still remains a debatable one, because I know I'm not the most positive Baker Mayfield guy in the world, but I don't think that that's a complete bust. It's not the best pick you could have made at number 1 overall, but he wasn't a complete bust. He was a disappointment for the number 1 overall pick, but I wouldn't say he was such a disappointment that it drips over to bust territory. Could you have made a better pick? Absolutely. You could have drafted Josh Allen. And I know a lot of people are going to be in the comment section, Quincy, Josh Allen doesn't develop into what Josh Allen develops into unless, he's in Buffalo or whatever. And my counter to that is, we could have hired Sean McDermott. We didn't have to be out here giving Josh Allen to Hugh Jackson. We literally could have just hired Sean McDermott. That's the answer to everybody who tries to throw that one. Oh, we were hopeless. The Browns would have never developed anybody. We could have had a better situation. And the Browns ended up becoming a decent situation after the rookie year. So there was chance for him to develop into that. You could throw Lamar Jackson into that pie. I think the Browns were never going to draft him number 1 overall, but they could have drafted Josh Allen number 1 overall that year. It would have made sense, and people wouldn't have been like freaked out by it. And the last thing, and the last missed opportunity in Cleveland is Odell Beckham in Cleveland. Let's say some of these things do go right. Let's say we have a better quarterback in Cleveland when we make the trade for Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham is closer to his prime, right? Because we got Odell Beckham in his prime. Imagine if that could have worked out, but unfortunately, we just didn't have the quarterback that can make that work out. So those are some of my Browns missed opportunities. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.